Hi, my name is BChalmers, and today I'm going to be presenting my interpersonal communication project for HSCO 508 for Liberty University. Whenever it's time to change the slide, I'm going to simply say next. Next. A brief overview of what we're going to be going over today is I'm going to introduce myself, go over an overarching goal, look at my background and my behavioral blend, discuss some of my communication barriers, and look at some resources and strategies for those. And I have developed an action plan to improve my interpersonal communication. I'll also conclude the presentation. Next. So, who am I? Like I said, my name is Brandy. Education-wise, I have a master's in clinical counseling focusing on play therapy in children. As you can see, I love kids and I love toys and having fun with them and helping them heal. Also, I'm getting a second master's degree focusing on military resilience because I am the wife of a service member and I would like to learn how to better help those who are serving, whether it be active duty, spouse, or dependent children. Identity. Who am I? As we learned in this course, identity is formed through relationships, and so I'm a lot of different people. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I am a play therapist. You know, that cool girl that kids get to hang out with who's a grown up but also fun. I'm also a strange lady at Books a Million who makes recommendations to strangers because I'm like, ooh, you have to read this. So I'm a lot of different people. Sometimes I'm also pretty serious. I'm working as a grief counselor. Um, I'm not always this fun, loving person. Sometimes I just sit with people through hard, difficult feelings. Next. So, what is interpersonal communication? I felt like it would be helpful to briefly touch on this, and because of the nature of this presentation being so short, I'm just going to hit the high points. Interpersonal communication is a quality contact, according to Stewart. It involves both listening and talking. It's the presence of being personal, Stewart says, and it can be good, bad, ugly, ineffective, effective, all of the above. It's the verbal and the nonverbal. Campbell says that it's the exchange of information to improve mutual understanding. I really like that because everything we do to communicate is to better understand each other and to feel understood. Next. So, my overarching goal in life is to help others become courageous through providing unconditional positive regard, genuineness, and empathy. I am a Rogerian counselor, and so those three conditions are a huge part of the healing process to me. And courage, it takes a lot of courage to move on with life and to keep going and to be seriously content with life. It takes a lot of courage. And I added this quote because I feel like it really tied how interpersonal communication helps me meet my overarching goal in life. Winston Churchill said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." I've learned a lot in this course about listening and about how I'm not always the best at it. And sometimes I say a lot more when I really should be listening a lot more. Next. So, my background. What about me kind of gets in the way of my interpersonal communication or makes me who I am as the way I communicate? I had a pretty rough childhood, filled with a lot of trauma of different natures, physical, emotional, sexual, everything. It was pretty rough. And we've learned from Beck, Grant, Clapp, and Palo that trauma impacts interpersonal communication. Things that happen to us during those developmental years that are so core, like attachment and security, when we don't receive those, how we relate to people looks a lot different. Experiences shape our brain. The difference between a healthy attachment kid and that kid that's never really attached looks very different. But trauma can also allow resiliency to grow in a person. And that's kind of how I feel about myself. That whole egg or tennis ball thing, I think of myself as a tennis ball. And so I've grown resilient through my past and I made it a part of who I am. I've turned my pain into a purpose and now I'm a tennis ball who can bounce back even higher than before. Next. I'm also a play therapist. I've learned those basic skills. I have sat with kids through some very difficult things. I try to be the best listener I can, and this course has really helped change me, make me a better play therapist, because sometimes I find myself questioning what a kid is doing. Instead of just being present and child-centered and along for the journey, sometimes I think, why are we doing this? What does this mean to them? And that really gets in the way. So lately I've been making myself be more present, which is really hard, but it helps me be a better counselor, to just be present and to pay attention to my clients. Next. Also, I am a Christian. That really influences the way I communicate. We are reminded in the scripture, in and out, to be good listeners. In Matthew 11:15, we see, he who has ears, let him hear. So listen. Also, we're found that in the scripture that it's foolish not to listen. We see that in Proverbs 18:13. So I'm really charged to be a good listener. Okay, next. So my behavioral blend. I'm a CD type. Carbonell says that there's a predictable pattern of behavior that is found in these disc types. There's 4 different ones, and they can blend together to make who you are. Okay, so on the chart provided, I am that green and yellow. I am direct and strong-willed and very motivated, I would say. It's not on there, but I think it kind of is involved. I'm precise and systematic. I like things a certain way. I am very predictable, I would say. But what I found interesting about this type is it says that you are not very people-oriented. Well, I'm pretty people-oriented. I mean, that's where that trauma comes in. I think that it really changed me, impacted me, and made me more empathetic and able to understand and relate to other people. So in another lifetime, I could have been a CEO of a company and been that power-driven woman. But because of my life, I want to help others heal the way a counselor helped me heal. Next. So communication barriers. Whew. I need to work on my listening. I need to stop listening while agreeing, defending, disagreeing, and or advising, because Peterson says that is not listening, it's actually talking. Also, I have high emotions, those hot buttons that can really interfere with effective listening. Burley Allen talks about that. And then he also talks about fake listening. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, but I'm really like planning what's for lunch that day. And then, like I talked about earlier, sometimes I listen to respond. I'm with a client and I'm like, what can I say that's therapeutic and going to really help this person? I just need to listen. Next. So how to shift those barriers? I need to listen instead of talking. I need to reach inside and really look at these hot button emotions, see what is making me feel that way, and why do I need to try to defend myself. I also need to put my feelings aside and truly listen. Browning and Waite really charge their readers to do that, to just be present. It's not about you, it's about them, especially as a helping professional. And then I need to understand the healing impact of listening and how powerful it can be to just be there and not have some huge response. Next. So resources. What can I use to improve this? Well, there's the literature from this course that has been so huge. I also want to use that in my practice to give it to parents, to give copies of things that I would find helpful. They are great resources. Also, the TLC. I literally have this in my office. It is a great source. Like, thank you, Peterson, because I will use this with clients. I actually already have used it with parents. Also, the scripture. We are charged to listen, like I talked about earlier. Those who are silent are deemed as wise, and those who listen are deemed as having wisdom. This is seen in the book of Proverbs. We must listen to remain faithful and pleasing to God. We must listen or we're going to miss what he's saying to us. Next. Okay, strategies. I think avoiding the communication traps that Peterson talks about. A few that I really need to avoid is the I understand. Why do we do that? Even as a counselor, sometimes I say, I understand, and then in my head I scream, no, you don't. We will never truly understand every aspect of a person. So really, I need to work on not doing that. Asking for one-word answers and screens of all sizes. You guys got to put the phones away, guys. I need to own my own feelings and seize fake listening and stop with the conventional narcissism. I don't need to turn the conversation back to myself. If someone's telling me about their loss, their grief of their dad, I don't need to tell them about my own grief. It's just not helpful. We need to just listen. Next. So, what's my action plan? So my main goal is to become a better listener, but I want it to be more specific than that. So I said my specific goal is to actively listen during 3 conversations per week for the next month. I actually decided to develop like a checklist, and so I'm just going to check it off when I know that I have. And so I feel like that will be an easy goal to meet, and that way I can work my way up to being a better listener in all of my conversations. Next. Okay, so to conclude this, I need to be aware of my barriers, and I am because of this assignment, and I need to actively work to keep them down. I need to use my strategies. I need to inhale and exhale, back and forth, not just one, or I'm going to pass out from not being able to breathe. I need to make meaning, and I need to be quick to listen, as the scripture reminds us. Next slide. Here are my references on the next 2 slides. These are all great resources to improve your interpersonal communication. Thank you for watching me today, and I hope that you enjoyed learning more about my interpersonal communication. Thank you.